So, friends, let's continue with our chapter. Okay, like we'd spoken in the previous class, that we had seen what are the basics of memorandum of association. Now we're going to come into the part where we're going to alter it. I'll tell you why exactly this part is important. Okay, the provisions of the memorandum of association that we have seen so far is usually already completed at the incorporation stage. Okay, and this is a very general statement. This is not applicable to companies or reality or anything like that. There are many private limited companies that stay as a private limited company for a very long time, which means that once the MOA is signed at the time of incorporation, it mostly stays that way. The capital is not changed, the subscribers don't change, the objects clause remain the same. Okay, you can have a situation like this. So most of the times the incorporation, from incorporation, the memorandum is the literal same, unless of course the law changes and then the law requires you to have slightly different provisions or something like that. We can stick to the same provisions, but this is not the case with every company. See, you see, the purpose of running a company is that there are a lot of actions taking place, and for whatever reason, the company can change its name, or it can it can increase its authorized capital, or it might realize that its resources or its logistics or capabilities are better off in a different place. That the government is opening a, let's say, an SEZ, or a tax-free zone, where if where this company would attract much higher benefits, then it's likely that the company will change its registered office. Now you see, in the MOA we saw, yes, there is the name clause. Okay, now the company has been operating on a name for a very long time. So for example, if you have to take the name clause, we changed our name from Helix, okay, Helix to Maya Private Limited. Now, why did we make this change? I would have probably made this change for multiple reasons. I could have been merged into another entity, or I could have realized that I may have had a trademark for the name Maya, and so I feel like I will attract better customers with the name Maya. For whatever reason, the name can end up changing. Even the registered address can end up shifting from anywhere. It can be from Coimbatore. Alright, these are just examples. I can shift from Coimbatore to, say, Tirupur. These are areas within the same locality, within the same district almost, if you could say. Or I can shift from Coimbatore to Chennai. What is the difference between Coimbatore and Chennai? They come under two different ROCs. Okay, Coimbatore and Tirupur will come under the same registrar of companies, Coimbatore. But then to Chennai, there's a different ROC over there. Or I don't want to be in Tamil Nadu anymore. So I'll shift from Coimbatore to where? I can even shift to Pune. This is not even within the same state. I'm shifting to a completely different state itself. So my address also can change over here. Okay, then one of the most common alterations in the memorandum that we can do is the capital clause. Okay, the capital clause, I may have an authorized cap of 15 lakh rupees, and now suddenly I'm getting in foreign investors, and foreign investors bring in a lot in terms of currency and value exchange. It's a lot more. So now I wish to increase this to my authorized cap to 300 crore rupees. Can I do that? Definitely. I just have to follow the rules with respect to the Companies Act, and it's very possible. And then, can I change the objects of my company? The answer is yes. I can go from just manufacturing and export of sugar, to even saying that I will manufacture, um, say, machines for processing sugar. So now what am I doing? I am not just manufacturing sugar. I'm also manufacturing I'm also manufacturing machines for processing sugar. That means I'm building something else entirely. I'm changing the object clause. Or I can enter from manufacturing sugar to into the hotel industry if I want to. Okay, so there are many actions that take place over here. And even in the capital clause, I needn't just increase my authorized capital alone. I can even include preference share capital in this point if I want to. So all of this requires an alteration of the memorandum, alteration of MOA. All right. Now I have one small problem over here. All right. So let's say in 1963 the authorized capital, okay, the authorized capital of the company was 10,000 rupees. Okay. In 1975, the same authorized capital increased to 25,000 rupees. In the year 2001, the authorized capital got increased to 20 lakh rupees. And then we are in the year 2025, where the authorized capital is now 1 crore. Okay. But how do I know this? You see, I would have had my MOA in the year 1963. The MOA would have a capital clause that says the capital is 10,000 rupees. But then now I've altered it. I've altered it to 25,000 rupees. Now, what happens to the old copy of the MOA where the capital was 10,000 rupees? Okay, if someone pulled out the memorandum of association of the company in the year 1963 and saw the MOA, they'll realize that the authorized capital is 10,000. But then if someone opens up the MOA in the year 1980 and they check the capital clause, it will now be 25,000 rupees. So how is it possible for me to actually check that the capital was increased like this over the years? That is why you must mention it in the MOA that the MOA has been altered. So whenever there is an alteration, okay, alteration of MOA, the timeline will be specified. It will be clearly written. Clause, the capital clause was altered on this date on this EGM or AGM. And before that, it was altered on this date or at this EGM. So you should always mention a timeline when a memorandum is being altered. So this is just a note for you to keep in mind. All right. Now, before we go into the intricacies of every single topic, that is with respect to each clause of memorandum, how you need to how you can alter it and what is the process to be followed, I'd like you to understand one simple concept before we move into this. Now, this is a concept that you may choose to write down, or even if you simply understand it, it's sufficient, it's more than enough, because each one of these points will be discussed throughout your subject. We will be studying about meetings, the powers of board, general meetings, how they are to be conducted, etc. But moving forward, before we touch each one of those chapters, I would like to tell you what is the progression of events that actually take place. Okay, and for this, we're going to assume an example. So let's take our example as alteration of authorized capital of Helix Private Limited from 15 lakh rupees to 2 crore rupees. So this is our example. And again, like I said, this the progression of events is what I'm going to tell you. Now, how exactly do you go about altering this? Throughout this chapter, we're going to understand that this alteration is possible. Yes, but how do we do it? Whenever you do anything in a company, first things first, a board meeting has to be called. What? A board meeting. Okay. But for a board meeting to be called, that is a board of directors meeting to be called, a notice should be sent to all the directors when before 7 days. There is the concept of shorter notice. You can bring in a board meeting shorter than 7 days, but like I said, these provisions we will be studying later on. A notice should be given to all the directors of the board, and then a board meeting should be called on one day. So let's assume that the notice to directors was sent on 1st January 2026. Okay, and the board meeting is to be held on 8th January 2026. Ma'am, but there's more than 7 days difference over here. There is not less than 7 days notice should be given in advance to a board meeting. Okay, now at this board meeting, right, there will be a lot of agendas which will be discussed. And these agendas can either be passed, like yes, it is accepted, or it can be rejected. Okay, so in these board meetings, something can either be passed or it can be rejected. Now, at this board meeting, they'll discuss multiple things. The first thing that they will discuss, the first agenda item that they will discuss is yes, we wish to alter the MOA. Not, they won't start with alter the MOA. We wish to increase the authorized capital, okay, and subsequently and alter the memorandum of association. Because when you are altering the authorized capital, automatically the MOA also has to be altered. Now you can't assume that one is happening automatically, the other should happen. No, everything should be discussed at the board meeting. Now, this will be discussed. However, the increase in authorized capital, let's assume, okay, this is only an assumption. There are a lot of assumptions here for the sake of an example only. Let's assume for our sake that the increase in authorized capital has to be approved by the members. Okay, one thing that you need to know very clearly is that if the directors have power, then they can approve of actions at the board of directors meeting. But then, if members are required or members' authority is required, it is only at the general meeting that it can take place. So, in our assumption, we're going to assume that the if there is an increase in authorized capital, it must be approved by members. But you see, this is a board of directors meeting. So, if it needs to be approved by members, we need to now call for a general meeting. So, let's just call for a general meeting. No, a general meeting can only come after a board meeting has been called. So you send a notice to directors and you conduct a board meeting. Now, at the board meeting, you discuss whatever it is that needs to be discussed. Okay, and then the second one is you need to approve the notice of general meeting, because a notice has to be sent to the shareholders for them to turn up for the general meeting and then consider this resolution. This notice has to be approved of at the board of directors meeting, and the time, venue, date, place, all of that has to be determined over there. Then we also have to authorize, like whether it is a company secretary or a director, to carry out these activities. Because what did we say? A company is someone having corporate personality, but it is not a natural person. It needs to carry out its activities through a natural person. So, any kind of transactions that are being approved of at the board level has to be carried out by some person, whether it's the director, whether it's the managing director, or the whole time director, or the CS, or the CFO, or any other person. Some natural person has to be authorized. Okay, so great. Now that we've conducted our board meeting, now we should send out the notice. Now, if it is a private limited company, it is easier to send the notice. You can either go physically and hand over the notice to the members, because there might even just be two members. Or if it's a public limited company, you can end up having a lot more. But if it's a listed company, you're going to have lakhs and lakhs of shareholders. So then ultimately you have to determine how this notice should end up going out to people. Okay. And so again, those points will be discussed later, but let's assume that the notice was sent out on 9th January 2026, notice to shareholders. Okay, for what? For general meeting. Now, whether it is a annual general meeting which happens only once a year, or is it an extraordinary general meeting which can be called as and when is required, ultimately it's a general meeting of the company. Okay, now general meeting, uh, any AGM or EGM, the notice to shareholders should be given 21 days in advance. What is it? 21 days in advance. All right, so it's already the 9th of January 2026, so the general meeting should happen 21 days later only. And so let's assume, just for convenience sake, that the general meeting happened only on 5th February 2026. Okay. Now, at this general meeting, what will happen is, here also they'll consider some agenda items, and that is your alteration of authorized capital plus alteration of MOA. I won't use the word alteration. Let's just write increase of authorized capital plus alteration of MOA. This has been passed by the members. Okay, and as usual, we'll have to authorize a person to carry out activities. What is this carry out activities? You see, the increase in authorized capital or the alteration of the MOA has certain requirements, and this is what we call as filing of forms. Now, for filing of forms, especially with respect to our chapter, you will notice that it falls under two categories. One is that before one is before the action takes place, okay, and one is after. So before, which means that before you increase the capital or any part of the alteration of MOA that you require, sometimes you need to file a form to seek permission from the central government if needed. So that means even before you alter, you need to first get the permission of the central government and then alter. Now, in our case, in case of increase in authorized capital, mostly this doesn't apply. But like I said, different parts of the MOA require different processes. Some processes require you to get permission first and then only carry out the process, whereas most other clauses, you simply need to file a form afterwards to intimate the ROC about alteration. You're just informing the ROC, see, listen, I've changed my registered address, or look, I have increased my authorized capital, or see, I have changed my name. So you have to intimate ROC, and that's when ROC will take it and then they will accordingly do the process. Either they are keeping it for their own records or they're changing their records for so and so. Like, how is ROC supposed to know that we are changed from Helix Limited to Maya Limited? Only if I intimate them about it, right? So for each one of these, there are forms which will be specified. And for that, we need to study which forms are required. And this filing of forms is usually with either the central government or before the ROC. But then there are also some post event actions that require to take place. This is purely the requirement of the company. Like, let's say, for example, that the company changes its name, then it will have to change its letterhead, its letters, its check, bill of exchange, hundis, promissory notes. It will have to change the signboard outside its office. These kind of things. So these will lie mostly on the activity of the company itself. All right. But can you see here? I want to bring your attention to how we do these actions. We always call for a board meeting first before we call for a general meeting. Now, for a board meeting itself, we have to first send out a notice to the directors in 7 days in advance and then only call for a board meeting. Then, at the board meeting, we have to approve of a notice for the general meeting. Because if it was not approved at the board of directors meeting, we cannot actually call for a general meeting. Now, if once it gets approved at this stage, we have to send out notice to the shareholders and then give 21 days, and then you have to conduct the general meeting. And then over here, at the general meeting, it is either approved or not approved. But remember, I said over here that in some situations, you'll be required to do a you need to first seek permission from the government and then only carry out the activity. So, here let's take another example. Okay, let's say we are shifting the registered office from Coimbatore to Pune. So it's from two different states, it's changing. Okay. At this point, the first process is we need permission from the central government. And don't worry, we will be studying about this topic in detail. I'm trying to explain a concept to you as to how you have to call the board meetings. So first we need permission from the central government. Can the company simply just go and ask permission? Can the director just simply say, okay, today I'll go and ask permission from central government, I'll go quickly ask and I'll come back? No. Here also, first send notice of board meeting. How many days in advance? 7 days in advance. Then conduct the board meeting. All right. And in this board meeting, there is the main agenda item: seek approval from central government for change in registered address. Okay, to do this activity itself, you need to have a board meeting. And then what is the second one? Authorize either CS or director to carry out the activity. Okay, so let's assume in our case the CS has been given power. So now what will CS do? The CS will file the form, whatever the form is, plus the fees, okay, with the central government. Normally this is the RD. The regional director is who we refer to when we are when we're seeking any form of permission from the central government. We're not going to go and stand in Prime Minister Modi's office and be like, please give me permission for this. There's a process that we follow. And then the RD will accordingly they will either approve or they will reject. So let's assume in our case that they've approved it. So now they've approved it. Now, again, to carry on the actual activity of shifting the registered address, this is the second process. Okay, the second process is carry out the activity. But to carry out the activity, please understand that in the first board meeting, we only got approval for getting permission from the central government. Now, again, notice has to be sent out. Okay, how many days? 7 days in advance. Okay, and then you call for a board meeting. And in this board meeting, now you discuss, first agenda item is shift registered address from Coimbatore to Pune. Okay, and then the subsequent items. Then don't forget, this is an item which can't just be decided by your board of directors. You have to approve the notice for general meeting, and then you need to authorize, say, company secretary to carry out that activity. And then you need to send out the notice again for what? Notice for general meeting 21 days in advance, and then you conduct the general meeting. So I've explained the process to you, but see how where permission from the central government is required, you have to have one board meeting. After you've gotten approval, again you need to conduct another board meeting and then the general meeting, and then it goes on like that. So I hope you have now understood what is the concept of conducting a board meeting and a general meeting and seeking approval for each one of them. Okay, If this concept is clear for you, now we will go into detail about what? About the actual alteration in the memorandum of association of a company. All right. So when we're looking at alterations in a company, um, one one thing that we need to look at is the section number 13. Okay. So section number 13 is basically saying that, and I'd like you to read this part with me. Save as provided in section 61. Okay, read it with me. Save as provided in section 61. A company may, a company may, by special resolution and, okay, it's an and provision. So that means there's a requirement to file, I mean, to pass a special resolution plus comply with the procedure required under law, okay, alter the provisions of its memorandum. Now, why is this important is because with respect to section 61, section number 61 talks about alteration of alteration of share capital. So I'd like you to make a very important note over here. What are the different clauses that we have under our memorandum? We have the name clause, we have the registered office clause, we have the object clause, capital clause, and our liability clause. Now what they're saying is that apart from the capital clause, okay, because capital clause is already being discussed in section number 61, so we have to for alteration of our capital alone we follow the provisions under section number 61, but for everything else, that is for name, registered office, object clause, and liability clause, okay, for these four we need to pass a special resolution and follow the procedure required by it. And like I already told you, the procedures for each one of them will vary. Depending on the requirement, it will vary. Okay, so section number 13, clause 1 is made very clear. Apart from the capital clause, that is your section number 61, save is what is already given under section number 61. Any other alteration of your MOA has to be first passed through a special resolution and follow the procedure by law. Now, just to give you a quick concept of special resolution, okay, again this is a concept that we will be looking at later on in the subject itself, but we have something known as an ordinary resolution, and we have something known as a special resolution. Okay, so this will be conducted only in the general meetings of the company. General meeting can either be the annual general meeting or it can be the extraordinary general meeting. Okay, but does this apply to board resolutions? No, because the concept of board resolution, there's no concept of ordinary and special resolution at the board level. Okay, so it is only in general meetings that you can either pass an ordinary resolution or a special one. What is an ordinary resolution? It's nothing other than a simple majority. It is a simple majority. So if there are, say there are two members. Okay, one member is holding 66% share capital, the second member is holding um 34, is it? Yes, 34% share capital. Okay, now one person votes for the resolution, the other person votes against the resolution. Now tell me, is there a simple majority? Yes, because it's already 66% is already more than one half. So basically, the number of shares that is more than one half of the total voting power, okay, is what we call as a simple majority. But in a simple resolution, we call this as a special majority, or three-fourth in value. Three-fourth in value of total voting power. Okay, so let's assume here again in our case, we have 66% shares and the other person has 34% shares. And here, one is in favor, the other is against. But wherever a special resolution is required, it has to be 3/4. That means 66% doesn't make 3/4. We need at least 75%. In this case, we can say that the resolution has not been passed. But same thing if we alter this in such a way, let's alter the shared capital. Let's say a group of people together are holding 86% voting power, and one person is holding 14% voting power. Okay, now they vote for the resolution, this person doesn't vote, he votes against. Is there a special majority? The answer is yes. So I'm just doing this very quickly to help you understand the difference between an ordinary resolution and a special resolution. How do I know if I need to pass a special resolution or ordinary resolution? We already just saw a provision. It will tell you in this case a special resolution has to be passed. If it is not mentioned at all, then you can go with an ordinary resolution itself. This is what our law says. A law says that wherever a special resolution is required, then you have to pass it as a special resolution. And here I'd like to bring you back to one concept that we studied in the previous class. What is that concept? It was known as the entrenchment provisions. You remember we studied about a concept known as entrenchment? It is in the Articles of Association, okay, where the company can choose to make a provision more stricter than it's required. So if a provision requires an ordinary resolution, okay, but then the Articles of Association says no, nothing doing, we want it as a special resolution, then we'll call this as an entrenchment provision. And this entrenchment provision can be put in at the time of incorporation itself, or the MOA, sorry, not MOA, the Articles of Association has to be altered. And aren't we in the topic of discussion of alteration of MOA and AOA? And it was clearly said if the articles have to be altered, then all members must agree. Correct or not? All members must agree. So, this is just a quick recap of the entrenchment provisions, but I hope you have understood the concept of an ordinary and special resolution. So, friends, now when we come back to our provision itself, our section 13 goes on to say that, see, if you are if you are going to be altering any part of your MOA, file a special resolution. So it's clearly coming out and saying you have to do that. And wherever you are filing a special resolution, you have to inform the ROC that you are doing such a thing. So now let's bring it back into understanding how it fits into our timeline. Remember, we said that a notice for board meeting should be sent. Okay, notice of board meeting. Then you actually end up conducting the board meeting. Then at the board meeting, you do what? One of the things that you do is you approve the notice, and then this notice you send it out as notice to shareholders. Correct? Then notice to shareholders means that you finally end up conducting the general meeting. Now, whether this is the AGM, that is annual general meeting, which is conducted only once a year, or do you conduct it as an EGM? That is dependent on the situation. At this point, a resolution will be passed. Okay, what resolution? A special resolution has to be passed approving of this alteration. Now, this resolution has to be filed with the ROC. Filed with the ROC. That is what section 13 clause 6 is coming in saying. File the special resolution of the company with the registrar. So now the question is, does it need to be filed at the stage of board meeting itself? Because at the board meeting also, even the board of directors have to approve of that transaction. But no, this clearly says that a special resolution is required. A special resolution can only be passed at the general meeting. So that means even at the board level, when the directors are saying, yes, we approve of altering the MOA, but subject to approval of the shareholders, at that stage you don't have to file this with the registrar. It's only when it's been properly approved of by the members through a special resolution, that time we will file it with the registrar of companies. So keep this in mind. We'll see the process a little bit later. All right. And then we have a provision, section 13, clause 10, that's saying that any alteration will not be completed unless the provisions of the section has been followed. So they're very clear about it. You cannot implement some other procedure for alteration. You have to follow the procedure given in the section number 13. Then section number 13 clause 11 is saying is a special provision. Sometimes company is limited by guarantee. Okay, company is limited by guarantee but not having share capital will end up altering their memorandum in such a way wherein they'll say that members is are allowed to participate in the dividends of the company. I repeat myself again. Members are allowed to participate in the dividends of the company. But what are you talking about here? Dividends can only be given for equity share capital. Equity share capital is not there because this company does not have share capital. It's limited by guarantee, but not having share capital. So how can you give your members dividends? Logically, it doesn't make any sense, right? So they're saying such a transaction, such an action where the company is trying to alter their MOA to do such an activity will be completely void, empty, zero, has no value at all. Okay, so this is a special provision that we are looking at. A special provision in the sense that it's a in case this happens, then it will be void. Okay, now that we've understood this whole concept of your alteration part, we've understood what is the process that could be followed. Now we look individually. If you want to alter the name clause, what is the procedure to be followed? Okay, so let's start with the name clause itself.